let me start by
Yeah.
sharing my screen, okay, and then we can go through some of the important things. And of course, we've asked you, Joanne, to come and join us today due to your expertise in the field, not only just impromptu speaking, but in all categories. And over the years, I've grown to like the way Team Hong Kong does impromptu. I think it's very well structured. It's some of the things that we Lithuanians should learn a little, I think. And there's of course a little difference amongst different countries how they do it. There's some stylistic elements, the way people approach it. We'll address all of that. But I thought I'll start off by just simply going through the rules because this session is an open session for all of the Lithuanian Debating Center, Lithuanian schools debating crowd. But we have already made up our minds on the final pool that we're going to be looking at for our nationals early January. So just wanted to clarify things on the rules and a tad so everyone's on the same page. So this is fairly self-explanatory. What you see on the screen is what you should be taking into account, but we'll go into some borderline cases and what's good and what's not. Okay, so each of the speakers will be able to take a piece of paper on which there'll be three topics drawn. One usually word, second a quotation, a third a phrase, but it doesn't necessarily revolve in that particular order. It can be mixed, depends on the competition. But you can only choose one topic, and that is very, very important. You can't talk about all three of them on your topic list, right? And you'll have 2 minutes to prepare, and you can do whatever you want. But what's important is that you don't look into your notes. This should be a clean sheet of piece of paper, and you should be fully engaged in that. If you don't need any reinforcements on that, and you can, freestyle it and do it in your head. We've seen some of those over the years. Um, but the notes that you make during the preparation time cannot be used at all during the delivery of your speech. So that's very important. The speaking times are from 3 minutes to 5 minutes with what grace period of 15 seconds on each end, roughly. There's different ways of how you can do it because I think this is by far the most creative event in the competition. So John, wouldn't you mind giving us a little bit of how do you see impromptu then? I just went through some basic rules, but what are the tips and techniques, styles that you like? Do all topics work with a set structure, or do you vary among, depending on the subject, on the topic that you select? Can, since this is a freestyle session, how do you feel about it? And in the meantime, I'll just open the ballot. Maybe that will help us guide through it a little.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I say this all the time in briefings. So I've been Hong Kong team coach since 2020. I think, well, I've been main coach since 2018. And I think that, so the last 7 years, we've been coaching Hong Kong and we take impromptu very seriously. When we do our trainings are usually 4 hours long. But at the end, we always have 1 hour that's impromptu. So we make sure that no matter what we're doing that particular week, we make sure that we have a little time for impromptu. The reason is because impromptu is one of those things that I think are two main things. One, it is extremely actually useful in real life. I think for no matter what you're doing in debate or in public speaking, or later on if you're doing MUN or mooting, you're a lawyer, even if you're not doing speaking for a living, you have to speak to people impromptu all the time. Right now, I'm speaking to you impromptu. Just now, Chris was speaking impromptu to us. So I think there is a bit of preparation, which is what the 2 minute prep time is, but it is probably the best and most useful skill you'll ever get from doing WIDPSC. So I think no matter what, I want to make sure my kids are good at it. The second most important thing of impromptu is that not only is it my favorite category, but it's also very difficult because I don't think that a person can very happily prep for only 2 minutes and speak for 5 minutes. Even adults find that very difficult. So we need to make sure our students are always like well-oiled machines, so to speak. They are not like rusty when it comes to impromptu because otherwise you won't be able to do it. So that's why we do it every week. My feelings for impromptu is that there are a lot of things to think about, but one of the major things it would be how preparation, the 2 minute prep time, is being used. It really is the make or break it for this particular uh, uh, category. The first make or break it is whether you're prepped or not, or whether you are like practicing it on a weekly basis or not. But the second one is how you use those 2 minutes. Um, I completely agree with Chris that some people never write any notes. We've seen people that take up the slip of paper and then decide they're gonna sit there, look into the air, like as if they're praying, and then they're just like muttering to themselves, and then suddenly they just come up and they make a beautiful, brilliant speech. Um, but most people, a vast majority of them, will write notes. It doesn't really matter whether or not you do or do not, but I say do write it if this is your first 5 or 10 times trying out impromptu. There's no point in looking cool doing it if you're going to look doing prep if you're not going to look cool when you're actually doing the speech. Um, During prep time, 2 minutes goes by 120 seconds faster than you think it does. I would say you look at the slip of paper, it'll only start timing when you open the slip of paper. First 15 seconds would be when you decide. We have had people that did wonderful speeches, even though they switched their prompt in the last like 30 seconds. Again, it's doable, but usually a vast majority of the time, first 15 seconds. For example, if I have like, let's say I was practicing with my kids earlier this week. Let's say the prompt is like, let's choose one, lollipop, selling ice to the Eskimo. And the quote is, "Listen up, there's no war that ends all wars." Okay, so that's like how it usually sounds like. What I found out is that usually there are people that go more for the quote, some people go more for the word, and some people go more for the idiom, and they always kind of stick with, most of the time, stick with that. I'll get into that later, but I think that choose it very quickly. And then the next 1 minute, you're kind of like brainstorming points. Just write down anything you can think of, any funny story, funny anecdotes, whatever point. Let's say the point is like, let's say lollipop, right? So I mean, think of lollipop as something that is a beautiful sweet, that my mom used to give me when I was young. But I was very disappointed that the fact that after I eat it, it's gone. It goes as quickly as it stays in your mouth. And I would then probably talk about the brevity of joy and how like actually joy is something that doesn't last a very long time. And we always get more sad about the fact that we lost it than we enjoying it at the time it goes. But actually, there are no lollipops are cheap. You can probably get another one. If we're too obsessed with the sadness, we don't get to experience the happiness. So that would be the structure of the speech. You already kind of have an idea. And then you then pop in the examples. You probably begin with like the actual jar of lollipop because it's very visual, very pretty. And then you probably go into how we as human beings obsess over the sadness of losing things. Maybe a societal example about how in psychology we actually value the things we lost over the things we win. That's also why gamblers always like kind of continue going on because they always think I've lost this, so I have to gain it back. But actually being able to step back and think, oh, actually, etc., etc. And now kind of going to the last point, which is saying, the happiness is more important. So how do you move on from that? And probably talk about, then you can probably pop in an example that you have prepared a little bit before, like because those examples are easier, like as somebody who fell down and then stood back up, and then I don't know, Elon Musk almost getting to like the point of bankruptcy, and then he just stood back up and then decided to, I don't know, assist Donald Trump into becoming president. I would not, I would not advise you to be too political, but the fact is that would be a good example. So you can already feel that that's 1 minute of brainstorming time. And then the last kind of 45 seconds would be for me just kind of polishing that. I always advise that by like the last 15 seconds, you're not writing anymore. You're not scribbling furiously on the piece of paper. You're actually preparing yourself. You're thinking about how you're going to do your opening, how you're going to stun the people. Because I think that the first 15 seconds or the first 30 seconds of a speech is actually very important. The judge is already kind of making a very important decision about you. I think anybody can relate to that, right? If your first time you see a girl, how you feel about the girl in the first 30 seconds impacts you a lot. So that's the same way. It's almost like speed dating. The judge is coming up and seeing you and they're making a judgment about you. So being prepared for those 30 seconds is almost more important than anything else. So don't scribble until the very last second. I know that when you're scared, when you're like freaking out, when you're just feeling like, okay, I need to have every single idea ever, hard to stop, but you have to stop yourself and prepare. I have a lot more things to say about structure, but basically, I think I wanted to go through the prep because I think the prep
Mhm.
is very important. And generally, I just think, going back to your question about what story, what kind of style, what kind of personality, or what kind of feeling, and this goes back to the third thing I was saying, why I love impromptu, because it's your personality. Some people are really, really funny. I mean, I've seen like Lithuania speakers that are extremely funny and very like humorous, and they have lots of self-deprecating humor. You shouldn't let go of that. That is your strength. That is your ammo. That's your weapon. If you're a funny person, you should never like try to do a very serious speech, or you can try, but you shouldn't think that it needs to be serious. It is said very clearly in the rules of WIDPSC that this is the category where it doesn't matter what you use. It doesn't matter what style you use, as long as you're captivating people and taking people on a journey. So if you're funny, be funny. If you have a very sad story to tell, I'm sure Chris and I, we've been in the circuit for like over 10 years, right? We've probably seen some impromptus that almost brings a tear to your eye. They mention how, their grandfathers were like immigrants coming to the country, and how they would be proud to see how they're standing here right now representing their country and to the world. Like even talking about right now, I remember being super touched at that speech. It can be very serious. You can be very, very funny. You can be casual. You can be very formal. I don't think there has been a lot of very formal speeches. We're generally leaning more towards like more casual. I remember 2 years ago at either Worlds or Internets, there was a girl who did began her speech with a call and response, and she was like, I think it's something like, uh, so when I say weak, you say strong, and then weak, strong, and they talk about how like weakness can be a strength or something like that. And first time the people were a little like the first time she did it, she was a little like nobody really did it because we were like shocked at what's happening. So she was like, "Come on, guys! Like this is public speaking competition. Let's get into it together." And so she said it again, and then people actually joined in. So I still remember this from 2 years ago because it was so special. So I think whatever is your personality, let it shine through. Impromptu should be kind of almost the best version of yourself. Um, and I think that's it for now. If we're looking at the score sheet, I probably can go in a little bit more about how like all the little categories like statement of topic, organization, appeal to audience, aptness of material. But I think really mostly it's appeal to audience. What about you appeals to the audience? And yeah, that's it for now. Anything?
I absolutely loved how you covered the part saying that you should definitely stick to your own colors and, be genuine with yourself. Don't try and get out of character. I think that very much symbolizes the essence of this category. And I thought, what is the innate element that helps you do well in this category is storytelling, right? And I think this is how we tried and shortlist our pool. The criteria on which we based it was a task primarily focused on storytelling. Just tell us a story, right? Because if someone captivates you, if someone moves you with their story, they can definitely drag it into a structure. They can draw parallels. They can definitely find situations in which your story applies in a different setting, and that works wonders. And I was just thinking, and of course, this will be a segue to our, further questionnaire and the list of questions that we have for today's session. But
Oh, I asked a
how,
question, Chris.
yeah.
Chris, when you were a competitor, what kind of character were you?
So I used to be a guy who would do something silly at the beginning, like I'd do a twist or I'd make a silly hand gesture that would relate to the topic. And I would always use that moment, that wit of mine that I still carried back in the day, and which I need to brush up on because it's quite rusty these days. I would do that, and in order to make a sad or a serious situation, I know, more relatable to people, right? Because it's very difficult, to talk about, I know, some political crisis in, I know, in Middle East, or I know, or talk about someone's bereavement. These are the topics that we generally think of, the no-go zones, right? That you should never consider for your impromptus as a good method of creating good content. But I think it's all about perspective. If you manage to draw in a healthy perspective that gives more credit to the topic and it actually brings it to life in a different fashion, in a different light. I think that just shows your aptitude to, I know, contextualize extremely difficult topics and thematics into a grand scheme. And I mean, it's extremely difficult to do it, and I'm not saying that I did it well, because if I did it exceptionally well, I would have been the champion in that category, of course, and it's not that easy. I think we only once had a Lithuanian in the finals for impromptu category, and that was Povilas in 2013. Um, he was a guy with a bow tie that just had incredible charm, and all the judges just absolutely loved him. Um, and what he did well was that he always contextualized of what's happening in the championship, in the room. And I know that there's been a little bit of a line crossed at that and on how much can you actually refer to the other speakers in the room and so on. Maybe we'll cover that. But you see, that's what I'm saying. I think the competition's evolved over the years. And for instance, from my point of view, 14 years ago, or like rather 13, when I started doing it as a speaker, we had a very different approach on how to do impromptu. Because over the past 2 years, adjudicating, I've noticed no one's really following a very strict structure. Because back in the days, we'd have I know, the classics, past, present, future, for and against, from me to we, local, national, international. And it would always revolve the idea of having three stories, three short stories or ideas present in your speech that would help shape and mold the final takeaway. Over the years, I've noticed that now it's been minimized into two stories or to two ideas, which sort of makes sense because at the end of the day, it's a 5 minute speech. And I want to ask you, John, how do you feel about that? Uh, would you still find a three-story structure acceptable? Should people still follow the old classic route, or it's not that much about a set structure that's been written in textbooks, but more about a structure that works for you? How do you feel about that?
Oh, that's an excellent question. We in Hong Kong, as on principle, dislikes canned speeches.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what we mean by canned speeches is that we used to notice that there are a lot of countries that are very, very good at impromptu or winning a lot. They would have these books or these lists of like kind of prepared examples, and they would be revising it the moment before they go up. They literally will be flipping through it, and we would be shocked because we thought that impromptu was impromptu, and it's not like, you take your selection from 100 different canned examples and then switch it around. Not to say that I think that preparation is a bad thing. I do think that um when I first came into the circuit at 20, I think like 15, 16, 17, I was a younger, more angry person, I guess. I was just more like, that's like, violation, but now I'm just like, I kind of get it. There are stories you tell better. If you have an amazing story about how you stood up to the school bully and you punched them in the face, you have an amazing story about this little known like a ballet dancer from your country that overcame disability to like triumph. I really don't think I should just deprive you of the chance of using that. And at the end of the day, to be very realistic, nobody really knows that you're reusing that story because like me as your coach, I know like we had one kid who
Mm-hmm.
broke his ACL halfway through training, and every single impromptu was just about how he has suffered, about like, how ACLs are very important, and he ended up going far and worlds, probably telling that exact, not even I knew that he was telling probably the exact same story, but it was to a different audience. Now, that being said, of course, there's things to be careful about. Like if you're doing the same speech at preliminary rounds and also finals rounds, and then you're doing the same story, you will be found out, and people will tell on you, and it's not a good thing because that's not what impromptu is. But what I'm saying is preparation is something that has to be taken in moderation. Like whether or not, so you can think about what stories you want to tell. And I do think that, but to be very realistic, I can't tell a story very well the first time I tell it. I probably need to tell it like two, three times before I know how to land the punchlines of a story. So that's about examples. Now, how many examples to use? I do agree that for me, at least like, or at least the way I train, I do think that two is probably better than three. Like 3, you just end up rushing through it a lot. That you have every story becomes 1 minute long, and you need to rush through the setup, etc., etc., everything. I'm also more of a descriptive and visual speaker. I like to put like images in people's minds as to describe it. Like for example, for the lollipop one just now, I'll probably just begin literally with like, imagine this mountainous, gigantic jar of a billion different colors shining in front of you, and you're a 5-year-old child staring at that. That is more beautiful than anything you've ever seen. That was a jar of candy my doctor had in his office. And I knew that if I was good for 45 minutes, I could get one lolly from that jar and I'll be happy for the next 5 minutes. So that would be the beginning of my story. And you need time to do that description. If you notice in I think 2023, the time when we went to Durban, South Africa, the boy who won, Thomas, he did a 2-story structure. So it was
Hmm.
the structure of like the tower in his home city that was sinking, and also how his grades was sinking because he was not prepared for it. And he kind of wove them in together like a DNA structure. He began with that, and he said, hold that thought. And they started like weaving the 2 stories together until it became the end. Uh, it's a brilliant speech. I kind of love and hate it because one, I love it because it's different from the three speech, but I hate it a little bit because my kids saw that speech and 5 of them started saying hold that thought in like their
Hmm.
their round. I'm like, stop copying other people's structure. Find your own. Um, so yeah, I think that there is, at least for me, less value now for the 3-story structure. Because what happens with the 3-story structure is usually they have like begin with some kind of preamble, and then it'll be like, today I'm going to
Hmm.
demonstrate to you why that is true with 3 examples, one from history, one from a book, and one from a personal struggle with, I don't know, anemia or something. And then they, yeah. I've seen Canadian or American kids do it very, very well. So there are, even in my room, one child did it really well, and I gave him 92. It was just, when it's done well, it's just so polished and beautiful that you cannot possibly, it's almost you can't turn away from it. Yeah. But
But I have a feeling when it is so polished, it means that the certain thematic that tend to repeat time in and time out in the competition, and it's just the topic may be phrased in a different, you know, actual textual sense, but it
yeah.
means the same thing, and it may be the case that people have already done a speech of such kind previously. So, sorry,
Yeah,
just thought I'll throw in a remark of such kind.
definitely 100%. I mean, I'm like, this is my what, 11th year, well no, well 10th year doing this, and of course there's only so many underdogs, overcoming struggles, like there's only so many, and the ones that have done it multiple years, they also have frustration with that too. um at the end of the day, what I think is, um there is the fact that we're bringing people on a journey is important. And if you want the structure of 3, make sure it's a structure of 3 that fits with the thing. So for example, I had a kid who did a speech on flight, and then he talks about how a plane ride is always kind of like about kind of like the whole taking off, taxiing, and also like landing. And he kind of
Mhm.
contextualized how life, we have to like find happiness in each one of those parts, or else yeah. So I think then that makes a lot of sense, and that also shows what is the most important phrase. If you don't remember anything from what me and Chris has talked about today, remember the phrase agility of thought, right? I think that the phrase agility of thought in the rubric of impromptu is the heart of what impromptu is. How agile is your thinking? So you're able to look at flight and you're like, okay, it's process, and how do I break down that process? How do I get that and talk about not just about a flying experience, but how about the entirety of humankind in that? Um, so like just now when I said lollipop, right? I'm pretty sure like if I gave the word lollipop, and I love this exercise. Sometimes I give it to my Hong Kong team. I'll be like, let's put this out there, and one person makes a speech, and everybody else would then still talk about what they would have talked about. It always like surprises me how so many people have so many different ways of breaking it down. But I'm sure when I give you the word lollipop, maybe you didn't think of what I was thinking about, like, oh, the brevity
Mhm.
of like human happiness. Maybe you thought about like I don't know, food safety, or you talk about
Or
like how
sweetness of life. I don't know.
yeah, or
Anything,
you talk
right?
about how maybe certain things the kids love lollipops, but adults less so. Maybe certain things you only like in certain areas of times of your life, etc., etc. So I think just as long as it's organic. I think I'll end on this following note, which is just echoing what Chris said. I think said really well. Don't let the judge think that you have pre-prepared something and you're just trying to twist the prompt to fit into that. Let's say you have a very well series like prepared series of examples about like triumphing over failure, and then your prompt is like blink and you'll miss it, and then obviously it's not really about that, and but you then talk about how like success is blink and you'll miss it, and thus you have to like overcome things and come back to success again, and you're like it's
Yeah.
not about yeah, so yeah.
How do you feel about speeches that sound incredibly well, and then you think, "Oh, wow, what a wonderful speech," and then they tell you what their prompt was at the end, and it has nothing to do with it? Have you ever
Oh
had
yeah,
something along those lines?
not a lot, but yeah, I mean, I would just deduct marks. Like,
No, so how would you score a speech of such kind? So we often rarely score in the low 70s, right? In the actual worlds, right?
yeah.
So if you had a terrific speech, wow, one of a kind in the room, you thought, okay, they should be in the files, and then they tell you their prompt and it's nothing to do with their speech or is loosely connected. How much would you give? What sort of score would you attach to a speech of such kind?
I'm trying to imagine one time that happened. I guess like let's say it was originally gonna get like an 89 or a 90,
Hmm.
because it was well structured, blah 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 blah, etc. Um, it depends on how far it is also. Like and it doesn't have the element of what you just said, what I just said, which is like does
Hmm.
it feel like it was canned and therefore he was gonna deliver that speech no matter what. Uh let's say it was gonna 90, I guess I would at least take away 5 to 7 because I feel like
Hmm.
then it's not really um yeah, it's not really answering the prompt anymore. And I think 7 is fair because the fact is I think it depends. Like depends on so I think 5 is very fair because I think 85 would still make it like a between good and very good speech. It would not
Hmm.
tank his totally. If I feel like it's
Absolutely.
really yeah, really can, then I might go to 83 or even 82. And I still feel like that's because I cannot fault him for the fact that he's still a person that's able to deliver a very smooth, charismatic, speech. I think a person like that probably doesn't deserve anything that's 70 something. So probably 82. Yeah. 83. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shall we open questions from the crowd? We don't have a big crowd this morning, unfortunately, but nevertheless, guys, by all means, you can type your questions in the chat or just speak up. It'd be a great opportunity for you to get that key information today from our expert. Um, it's lovely to have you, John, today, because two minds are always better than one, and you know whenever you're advising kids in their preparation and how to do things, it's always these tiny details that you say, as you have said, so many uncertainties, so many different variables that you need to look after, and preparation is absolutely key. And let's talk about that preparation leading up to the competition. So imagine we select our team early January, right? And we have roughly 2.5 to 3 months leading up to the competition. You say you guys do impromptu almost every day. So would you say
No, no,
that
no, no.
impromptu should, but sorry, got it wrong then. But would you say that impromptu should be something that you, at least in some shape or form, visit every time you guys meet up?
So have you guys selected your team yet?
So it'll be early January where we already have the pool of candidates for it, but the final selection is going to be done in early January, February, January, yes, not June. Jesus.
So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, no worries. We used to do it in January as well, but we realized there's not enough time for us to train. So we did
Hmm.
ours in early November. But obviously
Hmm.
still it's not really that different because there's exam time right now for the kids. So we really just get 2 or 3 more sessions out of it. Um we train Yeah, we train every other week ish Sunday. And yeah, not a day of rest for the Lord. Just it is
Mm-hmm.
a thing. But what I so what I would do is like we would make sure that at the end of every other Sunday sessions we would have an impromptu session. And we'll make sure that's small, as in like if our team is let's say like 12 people, we'll make sure that we break it into 3 rooms and every room is no more than 4 people. So everybody at
Mm-hmm.
in that 1 hour gets to make a speech at least, and we get to comment on each other's speeches. Um, and oh no, I'm giving up my trade secrets. But like I do feel that in terms of trade secrets, so to speak, um I do have uh advice. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
it's advisable to over prepare for impromptu. Um, what I mean though is Hong Kong kids, I don't know if this fits into the stereotype of Asian children, will grind for something. I've had kids who did 200, 300 sets of impromptus before they went because I know because I provided them with 150 and they were like, "Can I have 150 more?" And I'm like, "What?" Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot. And so what I'm saying to you is not to do 300. Because what I notice is that you become very, unless you're a particular kind of human being who loves doing that, most of the people get really bored of impromptu
Mm-hmm.
and you can lose that spark. And also we're all just human. And what happens is once you've told a story multiple times, even at the competition, it's kind of the first time you tell it in a competition, you kind of feel like you told it many times already. So it becomes very slick rather than like spontaneous. So I would say find a good balance. Uh, my general advice is that you shouldn't really just you shouldn't do it more than once a week, like all the way up to like let's say it's like this year it's end of March, right? Up until like end of February, you shouldn't do it more than once a week. Just like make sure you're just like on the horse and just know that
It's
we know
building
what
up
it
that
is.
muscle memory. Okay.
Yes, exactly. So like even like on a muscle memory, what does the 2 minute prep time feel like? What does a three
Mm-hmm.
minute prep time, 3 minute speaker feel like? If you want to keep your brain active, I usually tell the kids if you're on a bus, you kind of looking out, you have nothing else to do, just there's words passing by, right? You see the word snacks. Okay, so you just think about it a little bit. Um, but the month before, I do think that as you're ramping up, you would do more. And especially the 2 weeks or 1 week before, you would probably be doing it every single day. And I wouldn't advise doing more than 3 or 4 in one go. So just like you do three, and then
Mm-hmm.
if you hit one that's good, this is actually not advice from myself, it's advice from one of my really high scoring competitors. And I asked him how he did it. He was just like, he just tries to do like 3 or 4. And the moment he hits one that he feels like is more like an 89, 90, he stops. He just leaves it on a
Ah,
good note.
that's amazing because I feel that you then try and compare your worst speech to the better one you delivered afterwards, and you
Mhm.
grind yourself to death for what went wrong, but you
Yeah.
can't really give a clear diagnosis because this is an impromptu exercise. This is not a set procedure that you always repeat time in and time out. Remontes is asking, is lying
Mm.
allowed? For example, talking about something horrible happened to myself to deliver a great speech, which didn't actually happen. How do you feel about it, John?
Ooh, that's a great question, Remittance. I'm sure it's happened. Like, those people who
I
keep
told my
delivering.
kids if you're completely stuck, that's better than nothing. So how
Um,
do you feel about it?
uh, I would
Lying is not
say,
advisable in life in general, right? They
what do you
say.
mean? I'm lying. No. I think that of course in real life, yeah, there's no point. But you are in a competition where you only get one shot to get a really good score for like one shot or 2 shots because there may be a double like 2 round situation. But um, yeah, I honestly think that if the simple answer is yes, it is allowed. No one's gonna check it. Uh, honestly, that's a simple answer. I just feel that you need to be careful because one, you are like 15, 16, 17 years old. You might think you sound very convincing, but us as adults, like, yeah, we kind of have a little bit more life experience. And if that's the way you're talking about your grandfather passing away, we're kind of like, really? Like you don't seem that broken up about it. Or maybe you get some details wrong and we're like, yeah. So I understand the temptation to do it. And in fact, I would say that all stories are kind of embellishments, right? It's really like you kind of embellish it a little bit. The story I was telling you about just now about my doctor's lollipop jar. It wasn't big, it wasn't, gigantic and beautiful. I didn't want it that much, but I was embellishing the story. Um,
Hmm.
I yeah, I think like just be careful about details like because we are adults and we can kind of see through it when it's not very convincing. And secondly, specifically to your question about like saying something bad happened to you, like let's say, oh, I am like suicidal and things like that. I think just it's really hard to get the tone correct about something sad happening to you if it's not happened. And secondly, and I'm gonna say this in the most tactless way possible. I'm just gonna be very honest. Your sad life experiences are not as interesting as you think it is to other people. Like,
That
there
is
are some people,
so true. So true.
yeah, some kids actually have like let's say like mental health episodes. And I think that's very serious and completely feel really sorry for them. But I spent 3 minutes talking about it. And I'm just like, okay, I feel like this is something I honestly just feel very bad for them. I'm like, you should be taking this up with your therapist or your counselor. Doesn't belong in a public speaking competition. Um, and also is very revealing and I'm just uncomfortable now. So I think that this piece of advice is something that I actually gave to multiple of my kids, not because they keep doing it, but because for a lot of teenagers, the easiest story for them to tell is their own stories. And most of them are real stories, even if they've embellished a little bit. But then they get really into it and they say a lot about it. And your judge is going to be either people like me, who's like in their 30s, or 40s or 50s or 60s. And they're gonna look at you and be like, that's great, but I really find it hard to resonate with that because I am like much older than you. That is why you actually need the societal examples. You need the larger examples. That's why just now when I gave you that like kind of demo, I would then immediately link it to how human beings react. Because a 50 something year old guy might not react to your story, but will react to what relates to all humankind. Yeah, it's a
I think
little, yeah.
you're
Yeah,
you're
sorry.
dropping an absolutely fair comment about this because if you think about the entire competition, you could argue that the persuasive round is a better outlet for you to talk about what happened in your life, right? And truly go into detail and then tell us some, intricate details about it that we don't as a society necessarily, resonate with no more or yet, so it's very important. And an impromptu round, I mean, the reason Joanne, you say this is because you've judged so many and people throw in all the ways. For some reason, it tends to repeat. It's the same story, just in a different setting. And it's not that we undermine them and we completely dismiss them. No, we are not some random sociopaths, judging in the competition that have no emotions. No, that we are empathetic towards you, but we're just saying that at the end of the day, you are there to compete and get the best possible score. And over the years, we've heard so many that it doesn't necessarily resonate with the judges so much, no more. In my personal perspective, I mean, from my point of view, I mean, if I hear the same story that I heard 10 times before, it'd be difficult for me to attach it to a 90 speech. I know, just it's personal for me. And yet again, that's not to me to say that we don't care about your emotions and what you've went through, but it's just there's always a different setting in which you can do it. And my suggestion would be perhaps put it in the persuasive route, or even if you throw in a story of such kind, don't make it the entire speech only about it. Contextualize it with other things. If you can draw your story into a different parallel in life and contextualize it with different societal norms or issues we have in the society, that'd be interesting, at least, some different tangent of your story.
Yeah, so like definitely 100%. And I think it's important for us to like make this point right now because I think we're living in a world that's full of like TikTok and like YouTube reels and whatever. The reason why I bring this up is because I think the way vlogging or like the modern KOL or whatever, these people, they love talking about themselves. I think a lot of the media we consume right now is people talking about themselves, and you might have this very warped feeling that that means like any story that you tell is worth people listening to, but it just isn't, because especially in a competition sense, you're not really showing skill by just telling your life story, no matter how sad it is. Like, um, but no, and I love how Chris like we're not sociopaths. I think, and yeah, we're not. And but it's just more that I can't, if I'm judging on skill, I can't see any skill in just telling a story really sadly. But there's a lot of ways to actually tell it well. I was looking at the list of kind of prompts I had. I was preparing, like, so there was like this one, like let's say it's a cardigan, right? So the first story that comes to my mind is a very sad story. So when I used to be a teacher, I would notice that certain some of my students, so the way I would begin the story is probably like something like, have you ever looked at a cardigan and felt incredibly sad? No, I don't hate cardigans. I think it's a lovely piece of clothing. But we have this cardigan in my school uniform. It's blue, it goes down to the sleeves, and I always thought it was beautiful. Until one day I realized one of my students would be wearing it at all times of the year, not just winter, not just autumn, but even during summer. I realized then through her friends, because I asked her friends why she would do that. Her friends were like, because she is self-harming and she wanted to cover up her tracks. The story then, not to go into her personal details, is then you would bring that story up and say, then what happens to, why do we do that? Why do we do
Mm-hmm.
something bad to ourselves and then we try to cover it up? Is that really the best way to be doing things? And of course, then you can probably have a middle part which talks about how that is a short-term solution because you want to get some short-term relief and you want to just not let other people know. But ultimately, wearing a cardigan in the middle of summer while you're hurting emotionally and physically is damaging, not sustainable. Then you bring and then obviously there's like a lot of things you can then cover. You cover like things like how human beings, when you look at a problem like let's say climate change, they have a lot of short-term solutions that they think might help, but actually it doesn't, because it just like makes the problem worse. And we need to, the only way to solve problems, no matter if that girl who's trying to cover up her emotional pain, or you're a person trying to help the world not going to a heated Armageddon, you just need to face the problem head on and maybe take off that cardigan during summer and just let people know that you need help, and then find the help, and then become a better person, become a better humanity. That's a speech that everyone can listen to and not feel like you're capitalizing on the pain of someone else. If the reason why I'm just giving like some kind of demonstrations is because I think sometimes it's very hard to understand what a good impromptu speech is until you kind of hear it. And that's also why it's important to train in little groups so you can hear your teammates give good speeches and you're like, oh, I actually like that style. Um, yeah. That was a very long answer towards a
No,
shortish
but
question. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think you've illustrated your point incredibly well. It's more about how you address the problem rather than addressing it per se, and if you, once again, you've just shown how you can contextualize that we should not, ignore our problems. Maybe once in a while, it's important for people to see that the problem exists in order for a solution to, be initiated in the first place. So incredible story. Yeah. So I think something like that works incredibly well because you contextualize the problem, that it is a problem, that people are feeling uncomfortable in that setting, that they do have to use, cover-ups to feel safe in our world. Then you can even
Mm,
ask the question, why do we act like that? What
mhm,
is there in our terrible world that we have to behave like that? Why do we have, then you just open yourself to a leeway of opportunities and how you can, just continue on to that speech. And
mm,
Joanne, it was absolutely delightful to have you today, sharing all of this expertise. I say it is expertise because it's not something that you can, watch on a YouTube tutorial or read online. It just grows into you over the years. And I think you're a perfect example of how seeing different kids from different parts of the world gives you a sense of what works and what doesn't, and especially for a category that, you know, at first glance doesn't seem like doesn't have a very strict criteria, right? It technically still does, because you still need to follow some ground rules that will, help you do a good speech at the end of the day. And Joanne, I'm really hoping and wishing you best of luck in your preparation with Team Hong Kong. We'll
Mm.
definitely try and incorporate the plethora of great examples and advice that you have given us today into our preparation. See you in Malaysia, and when we're in Malaysia, I'll try and ask one of our kids to prep with one of your kids as a good exchange, as a good exchange
Definitely.
exercise, just one day before whatever competition. I think it's nice because the Hong Kong kids and the Lithuanian kids managed to get along extremely well over the past years. I think there was
Uh,
some judge synergy, of course, they're involved, but
no, and like
yeah.
there's
So
like also like just I think they were hanging out last year already. Like I think I mean Lithuanian kids are always really fun to hang out with, and then they uh Team Hong Kong just usually we're going to have a good like, we're going there to have a good time. So definitely if you want to, I know we can like have something like that when we're in Malaysia. But and thank you so much for inviting me because I think I don't get a lot of chances to speak at length about impromptu as well. So you have made me think a little bit about how, like I think the thing about two examples and three examples is something I'm going to continue thinking about like tonight and like maybe into the future because I still think it's a tough one, and I almost wish that something a briefing like this could happen at Worlds before the rounds so that judges can have a better sense of the breadth of the diversity of speeches that come along because yeah we're not going to get into judging but
we,
judging
we should be using this as an exercise, and we can showcase it as an example because we'll have a recorded session of what it's like. I don't know. I'll bring it up to John Robinson. I still owe him the website that I promised, so still working on that. In January, I guess. Yeah. So no, you're absolutely right. I think. And also, there's some teams that don't necessarily have such well-established competitions and nationals. Don't know, how do kids from Zimbabwe or Botswana, for instance, operate?
yeah
Do they have strong national coaches, or do they only have an attempt to qualify through the African nationals? I don't know. It's a difficult
yeah
one, and I think if we made this as a you know open source sort of sessions,
yeah
this
I
could
feel like
definitely benefit the entire room.
yeah, exactly. I think feel like let's say today where this is kind of like a fireside chat or like like just a round table on something like this. Like wouldn't it be so amazing? I know that the world's like timetable is so packed, but if there could just be like let's say in the evening like just like a 30-minute session where like four coaches kind of sit there and then they just talk about the category and then kids can just come and they can just ask questions without like having because when you're briefing them in the morning they're really stressed and they're like not listening
Absolutely.
to you.
Losing their
Yeah,
shit.
so
And that's
yeah,
as simple as it is. Yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely their cortisol levels are going through the roof, and it's very difficult to tell them anything new, or even if you do, they forget it immediately. So
yeah.
absolutely
Yeah, we
true.
should
We should
I would
definitely
co-sign.
build up onto that. Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
I would co-sign that letter to John, like if necessary. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you very much. Enjoy your MUN. Thank you for taking your time on a Saturday. Well, that's just unbelievable how much you're helping us today. I'm sorry
Nice.
that we haven't really brought up big numbers today. I'll make sure that the pool candidates are all participating next Thursday on our prepared speaking session with Sean McCabe from South Africa. So we already had Kirsten
Ooh.
for interpretive. So people should
Dude,
be should
can I sit in on the can I
sure,
sit
sure. It's gonna be midnight in Hong Kong, but by all
in?
means, go for it.
Yeah, because like well, one, I miss Sean, and but secondly, just you are bringing in the big guns. Like Lithuania is gonna go through the roof, my friend.
I'm hoping this works out, but I think there's a lot of good things that we can build up on. I think in the previous years, potentially didn't have the resources or the time to do it. This
Mhm.
year, we're bringing a different attitude. I'm not sure if you know, Paulina is co-coaching with me, so she is
Yep.
bringing that participant, knowledge into the game. So we're really hoping that we can do like more regular and frequent,
Mhm.
team briefings and sessions to help kids prepare. And it's important because, especially for Lithuanians being non-native speakers, there's a certain element to it as well. Not having the advantage the Canadians or
Mhm.
Americans have on certain storytelling elements or fancy vocabulary. So yeah, and
Definitely.
at the end of the day, it's not only about that, of course, but it's just to prepare them, the mental game and to build up that muscle memory. I think we'll definitely incorporate all of the good things that you've mentioned today. So thank you
Thanks
very
so much.
much.
Oh,
Um,
can I possibly
mhm.
access this recording? Access
Yeah,
this recording.
absolutely. So I'll ask Milda send uh, to send the link. I think it'll be on our Facebook page. So
Mhm.
do you follow us on Facebook or no?
I am currently accessing it right now. Yes,
So
because I
try
do not.
it. Usually it is posted on the banner in the comments section. You'd have the
Yep.
recording, so you can try and do that. If you struggle
Okay.
with that, let me know and I'll send you the recording. Okay?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
the reason why is probably I'll just be playing this during my next training, so I don't want to speak.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's good if it's mutual benefit, not just on our end. So it was
Thank you.
absolutely amazing to have you on board, Joanne. Take care. Have the rest Saturday off and enjoy it, even though you still have MUN to attend. But
Yep.
anyways, it was an absolute pleasure to have you on board and take care and see you in Malaysia, I guess.
Yes. Take care and I'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.